The cabinets. Simple in appearance, but the hardest part to build. It all started with the legs. Complex, angled, and nearly impossible to get right. They were a challenge, but only the beginning. Now, it's time for the cabinets. They may look simple, but every cut, every joint, every angle has to be perfect. One slip here, and the entire desk falls apart. And along the way, some mistakes nearly ruined everything. But before we get there, let's start at the beginning. Building the cabinets of the Cavour Desk. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you remember, last video we created these legs. They're not yet finished, primed and sanded. We're gonna do that when we put everything together. So today what we're gonna do is we're gonna create the new shelf here, which is a cabinet more or less, and the big cabinet here in front. So we have everything ready just to finish everything and then put everything together. So let's get started with building this. With the legs done, it was time to start on the cabinets. For this part of the desk, I'll be using red oak for the carcasses and white oak for the faces and details. I already had the slabs in the shop, but they were still rough and oversized. The first step was breaking them down into manageable lengths with the track saw. At this stage, it's not about precision, just turning heavy, awkward slabs into pieces that I can mill flat. So this is the wood I need for the carcasses. This one, I don't know if I'm gonna use it because it seems to me that it's not really a good candidate. Turkish oak or Asian oak, however you want to call it, is this, which I'm gonna do the carcasses. This is white oak, which is gonna be the faces. So this is white oak, this is Turkish oak. Okay, let's put it here. So this is more reddish and goes into a more silvery at the end. This is more constant, and these are the faces. By these I think I'm gonna stain, but I'm not really sure. We'll see. As I said, this project is not really planned. It's me winging things. So yeah, because I'm winging it, I don't really know what's gonna happen, so you'll have to wait and see. With the rough stock cut down, it was time to move on to the jointer and planer, flattening and squaring everything into usable boards. I started with the jointer, flattening one face and squaring one edge. Then the planer brought everything to the final thickness. I have to do this a few more times, but we'll get it done. Each pass takes away material, so you need to balance removing defects with keeping enough strength in the boards. If the boards came out twisted or too thin, the cabinets won't fit together, and there's no way to undo that. Once everything was flat, square and uniform, I finally had stock I could trust for the cabinet carcasses. After a few afternoons of planing everything and jointing and whatever else was needed, I finally have my pieces ready, and now we need to start the glue ups. So I'm gonna pair everything I need together. So I have the drawers, the carcasses and everything. The carcasses will be done out of this oak. The drawers will be done out of white oak. And afterwards, we're gonna glue them up together and start building them. Let's do this. But first, let's cut these to length. I want this to be 60 centimeters long. So I'm gonna cut them a little bit proud, maybe 63 centimeters, and then we'll glue them together. Simple on paper, but every piece had to match perfectly. I measured each board carefully. This was the foundation for the cabinets. Even a few millimeters off here and nothing would line up later. The pressure was real. Every cut had to be square, every length precise. There was no room for error. The cabinets were wider than a single board, so I needed to glue up panels. This is always a tense step because you only get one shot. Too much clamp pressure and the boards bow. Too little and you're left with gaps that will never close. The glue sets quickly, so every move has to be fast and precise. It might look routine, but if this glue up failed, the entire cabinet would collapse before it even began. I'm gonna glue these up one by one because I only have 4 clamps and these are pretty expensive. So I'm just going to go one after the other. I'll leave this for 2 hours, then clamp another one and so on. It's not that many. We have like 1, 2, 3, 4. So in 4 hours we should have 4, 6, 8 hours we should have everything done. Also, I don't really care about the alignment because even if one's a little bit higher, one's a little bit lower, I do have a drum sander and I planed these oversized a little bit. So I'm just gonna put them through the drum sander and we're gonna have a perfectly nice flat surface afterwards. Right now it's important to have them glued up and working great. A few hours later, the glue had cured enough to take the clamps off. The panels came out flat with tight joints, exactly what I needed. The first big hurdle was behind me. With the panels glued up and solid, the next step was flattening and smoothing them. The drum sander evened out any tiny misalignments left from the glue up. Pass after pass, the boards came out cleaner, smoother, and ready for joinery. We drum sanded these to 80 grit. We're gonna do the same for 120 grit, and then we can finally start building these things. Yay! With the panels ready, I could finally see how the small cabinet would start coming together.
I mocked up the pieces, checking proportions and making sure the design matched what I had in mind. This smaller cabinet will sit on the right side of the desk, with a glass top to lighten the design. It's a simple box at first glance, but the details are what make it challenging. This mock-up also made it clear. To get the look right, every edge would need perfect bevels, and that part was going to be tricky.
So, what we need to do for the bevels is to put our blade at 45 degrees and sand it. But before doing that, we need to make sure that we're at 45 degrees, right? To do that, I'm gonna use one of these. This is a inclinometer, or what's it called? It's a digital scale that tells you what angles do you have. So what I'm first gonna do is I'm gonna set this on my table. I'm gonna start it, and let me bring you guys here. First thing, we're gonna start this, and when we're gonna start it, let me just bring some light, because we need some light. Now we can see. So if we put this on the table right now, it says that we're at 0.10 degrees off 0. So what we're gonna do, we're just gonna zero it because we don't care. This is the table based on the floor, so it's not that important. It's almost plain either way. So now that we're at 0, I'm gonna raise the blade up, still at 0, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna place this on the table. And right now, as you can see, our table is at 90 degrees. Our blade is at 90 degrees perfectly. I don't know how I set that up, but yeah. So now I'm gonna unlock the blade. I know that my blade goes a little bit more than 45 degrees. So I'm just gonna crank it up till the end. So 44.6 degrees. Now we're just gonna go up a little bit until we reach 45 degrees. Perfect. Now we can cut our bevels. Don't forget to turn up this thing because you're gonna regret it the next time you wanna use it.
Then came the most critical step so far, the bevel cuts. These panels need bevels on all sides, both along the length and the width. Every cut had to meet perfectly, or the cabinet would never fit together. The inclinometer guided the blade angle, but in the end, it came down to careful setup and steady cuts. If I missed the angle by even half a degree, the panels wouldn't close up. And with compound bevels, every mistake multiplies. Once the bevels were cut, the pieces finally started looking like parts of the Cavour desk. Now it was time to glue the small cabinet together. This was the moment of truth. Every angle had to close perfectly, or the whole thing would be out of square. To reinforce the bevel joints, I added biscuits along the edges. They help with strength, but more importantly, they keep the panels aligned while clamping. I cut the slots, dropped the biscuits in, brushed on glue, and brought the panels together. Getting a beveled box into clamps is always stressful, but once the biscuit slid and everything clicked, I knew the cuts were true. The small cabinet was together, square and solid, a big milestone in the build. With the small cabinet done, I moved on to the big one. The process was the same, cutting boards to length and beveling the edges. but the scale made everything a little bit harder. The boards were heavier, harder to maneuver, and keeping them flat on the saw took effort. I measured carefully, making sure every panel matched exactly. Cutting long bevels like these means you need consistent pressure the whole way through. Unlike the small cabinet, these panels were wide and awkward, which made it harder to get a clean edge. Even the smallest twist in a board can throw angles off, and with bevels on both length and width, every mistake multiplies. This is the part of the build that takes patience. Every board goes through the same process. Measure, mark, then cut. Again and again until you've got a full set of panels ready. Once the bevels were done, I finally had the main parts for the big cabinet ready. Next, I needed to make the back panel to tie it all together.
So, I wanted to make the back of it out of HDF, but I couldn't stand using that for this nice desk, so I do have a piece of oak which I'm gonna use. So I'm gonna cut this up. I'm gonna do the backing with oak.
So I cut the 10mm oak boards to size and jointed the edges before gluing them up into a single wide panel. Once the glue set, I sanded it down to bring everything flat and even. This back panel doesn't stand out visually, but it locks out the cabinet square and gives the structure its strength. It's one of those hidden parts of the build you don't notice when it's right, but if it's wrong, the whole cabinet feels off. With the back panel done, I could finally turn my attention to the first drawer for the small cabinet. Drawers are a simple concept, 4 sides and a bottom, but they demand precision. I cut the oak for the drawer sides to length and ripped them down to width. At this scale, even a millimeter off means the drawer won't slide or will rattle inside the cabinet. This was the first drawer of the build. If it didn't fit, I needed to redo it before moving on to the rest. With the parts cut, I could move on to routing the channels for the drawer bottom. I clamped each piece to the bench and used the router's edge guide to keep the groove parallel to the edge. It's a simple attachment, but it makes the cut consistent across all 4 sides. I took my time, moving steadily to keep the depth even and the groove clean. The fit had to be exact. Too shallow and the bottom rattles. Too deep and it won't hold. With the grooves finished, the parts were ready for assembly. The sides were glued and clamped, with the panel sliding into the grooves to lock everything together. This type of joinery is simple but unforgiving. Every cut has to align or the box twists out of square. I checked the diagonals, tightened the clamps and left the glue to set. Once the glue cured, it was time to test the fit. Sliding the drawer into place for the first time is always a moment of truth. This one went in cleanly, smooth and square. With the first drawer finished and fitting properly, the small cabinet was complete. It was now time to glue up the big one. The principle was the same, but this time the parts were larger, heavier, and harder to handle alone. I spread the glue along the bevels, lined up the panels, and started pulling everything into place. Getting a cabinet this size into clamps is always a wrestling match. The challenge was keeping it square while tightening the clamps from every direction. Too much force on the side and the whole cabinet racks out of alignment. Once it was clamped, the big cabinet was together, a huge step forward in the build. This cabinet would hold 5 drawers, which meant a lot of pieces to cut and fit. I started by breaking down the oak into sides and fronts, cutting everything to length. Then I ripped the boards down to width, making sure each set of parts matched perfectly. At this stage, it's all about consistency. 5 drawers means 20 sides, and every one of them has to be identical. With the parts cut, I could start preparing them for joinery. Every piece had to be smooth and uniform before I could cut the bevels. I ran them through the sander, one after another, until everything was consistent. Sanding might look repetitive, but it's what makes the joinery go together cleanly. With 5 drawers to make, even the smallest variation here would add up. Once everything was smooth and consistent, I was ready to cut the bevels for the drawers. This was the last major precision step. Every angle had to be perfect, or the drawers wouldn't close cleanly. I set the blade angle carefully, then cut each side in sequence. It's a repetitive process again, but one wrong cut here can ruin the whole drawer. With all the bevels cut, I was finally ready to assemble the first drawer for the big cabinet. I glued the sides together, slid the bottom panel, and tightened everything square. Once the glue set, I could test the fit inside the cabinet. It was the moment of truth, and the drawer slid in clean, smooth, and square. With the first drawer done, the system worked. The rest could follow. With the small cabinet finished, and the first drawer in the big one fitting perfectly, this build is really starting to take shape. Next time, I'll finish the rest of the drawers and bring the whole desk together. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.